대표님.
이봐, 유은호 씨.
Love Scout is a romance drama with a background of office life and business. This drama tells the story of a successful and confident woman named Kong Ji-eun. She is the CEO of a headhunting company, P+. Kong Ji-eun is very great and competent in her work. She is also always enthusiastic and professional in carrying out her role as a company leader. To survive in the highly competitive headhunting field, she puts all her abilities into work. However, Ji-eun also has shortcomings. She is incompetent in several other things outside of her work. Even so, she has Yoon-ho as her secretary. Yoon-ho is a hardworking and versatile father of a little daughter. As a secretary, he does almost everything for Ji-eun. In addition, he still plays his role as a single father who has to take care of his little daughter. Yoon-ho seems perfect in everything, from appearance, personality, and professional skills. He is a figure full of manners, warmth, kindness, and attention. This makes Ji-eun fascinated by her secretary.
대표님.
Ji-eun is on the circuit to meet Peter Kwon, the chief designer of the racing team at Genus Motors. She introduced herself as Kong Ji-eun from P+, but Peter Kwon ignored her. Because Ji-eun dared to visit him all the way there, Peter Kwon felt that he was not looking for a new job. But Ji-eun still tried to persuade Peter Kwon to change jobs, because she heard that his team was having financial problems. The management must have concerns about his designs and he might have trouble with his company. Then Ji-eun gave his past proposal when Peter Kwon first became a car designer. He sent these drawings to Auto Design 20 years ago. He introduced an aerodynamic design that gave a racing car experience to a family car. But according to Peter, it was ancient history. The world has changed since then. Ji-eun thought Peter's ancient concept was a new trend for electric vehicles and her client prepared a new model for electric cars. And they were looking for someone who could lead the project. That's why Ji-eun invited Peter to join. Because Peter had full freedom and authority over the design. Although change is always scary, Peter would be left behind if he avoided change. Then they introduced a new car, designed by Peter Kwon as the CEO of Premier 30, it was the latest model of Hanwha Motors. It turned out that Ji-eun managed to persuade Peter Kwon to move to Hanwha Motors. And it managed to attract attention with his first design work there. Ji-eun was invited as a guest star at an event. They were very interested in Ji-eun, who was good at recruiting workers. They asked if Ji-eun had any specific criteria when recruiting people. And Ji-eun answered that it was worth with their salary, because she believed that each individual could determine the value of a person. Although doing in a capitalist society is vulgar, if it is not worth it, then it is a crime. And Ji-eun chose to be vulgar rather than a criminal. When she wants to go home, Ji-eun got into the wrong car and then she got out of the car, feels embarrassed. Ji-eun told CEO Mai to find her a secretary. Mai wondered how Ji-eun could get into the wrong car, even though she had never been wrong about candidates. Then Ji-eun asked, when will her secretary come? But they are short of applicants, because many applicants have quit this year. Ji-eun felt it was impossible that Mai could not find anyone, because this is a recruitment firm. Ji-eun held a meeting with her staff. They were looking for information about Young Ho-jin, the leader of the wireless team, the head of mobile phone developers. He's the first leader of the wireless team at Hansu Electronics. He succeeded as a co-worker. That is why the client offered a good contract bonus. And that means this is a very important project for Ji-eun and her staff to succeed. The CEO of Hansu Electronics began to worry that Mr. Young has not accepted their offer to stay at Hansu Electronics. Because there is information about the company that recruited him and they have lost some co-workers who left their jobs at their company. So the CEO wants a staff who can ensure Mr. Young to stay at his company and then Mr. Song recommends manager Yoon-ho to handle it. Yoon-ho looks for Mr. Young in his office, But he doesn't find him, because Mr. Young has applied for leave, and Yoon-ho looks at the calendar that today is the confirmation of his transfer. Then he plans to look for Mr. Young, but his friend forbids him, because he has a hunch. If Mr. Young meets the recruiter, it means he wants to leave the company, and Mr. Song assigns him to Yoon-ho, because he knows Yoon-ho will fail. It turns out that Mr. Young invited Ji-yoon to meet, and he apologized for asking her to go to the temple, because it's quiet there. Mr. Young has worked in that company for 22 years, so it's not easy for someone at his age to move to another place. Ji-yoon can understand, because Mr. Young has worked in one place for a long time, but according to Ji-yoon there is no such thing as a lifetime job, because circumstances change. This year Hansu did not invest much in the hardware industry, and another company will conquer the mobile industry. The solution is consistent research in packaging, and the client that Ji-yoon brought in, which wants to fund Mr. Young's research and support him in technical aspects. That's Ji-yoon's client's offer, and would be Mr. Young's best offer in the field. Ji-yoon sure that Mr. Young was worth trying. Suddenly, Yoon-ho came and disturbed them. It turned out that Yoon-ho knew Mr. Young often came there when he needed to relieve stress. Then Yoon-ho introduced himself from Hansu Electronics to Ji-yoon. But Mr. Young is a valuable member of Yoon-ho's company, so he asked Mr. Young to talk to him too. Then he said goodbye to Ji-yoon, and Mr. Young left them. Ji-yoon was a bit annoyed, because Yoon-ho came along, interfere and disturb her. But according to Yoon-ho, Mr. Young has loved their company for decades, so don't influence him. It's hard to understand for someone who steals core employees. Yoon-ho knows that Mr. Young doesn't survive just for money. There is something greater than personal gain or success, such as the value of a company or loyalty. But Ji-yoon thinks it's very cliché, because Yoon-ho will face and learn that the company is never fully responsible for each worker. Because it's night, the way down from the temple has no lighting, and Ji-yoon walks with the help of her cell phone flashlight. But in the middle of the road, her cell phone runs out of battery, and Yoon-ho, who sees it, gives his light using his cell phone. Ji-yoon walks and Yoon-ho follows her, and the two of them walk without talking at all. Until downstairs, Ji-yoon only asks him not to meet again, without saying thank you, even though Yoon-ho has helped her. Yoon-ho meets Mr. Young in front of the food stall. He gives him the cell phone that Mr. Young once designed. It was the first model that Mr. Young made at the company. At that time Mr. Young was afraid that the cell phone would not be launched. And Yoon-ho feels that there are still many stories that they can write with Mr. Young, so he asked Mr. Young to also finish the hardware for his new series. Yoon-ho's co-workers in the HRD team had a drink together to celebrate Yoon-ho's hard work that made Mr. Young not move other companies. His friends thought this is the end of Yoon-ho's time in failure. Suddenly, Mr. Song came and joined them. He thought Yoon-ho didn't do this alone, because Mr. Young got a lot of things. The company gave him a good counter-offer, so this wasn't because of Yoon-ho. It seems like Mr. Song doesn't like Yoon-ho, because he once disappeared from the company because of a very long leave and then came back again. At that time the company was having a hard time because of Yoon-ho's departure. At that time Yoon-ho poured a drink for Mr. Song, but he didn't drink it and changed a new glass. And Yoon-ho just kept quiet, because he's only Mr. Song's subordinate and could only be patient with his behavior. When Mr. Song was in the taxi, he asked Yoon-ho, is he being unfair? Because Yoon-ho should have expected this when he came back. So don't try to come as if nothing happened, because Mr. Song hasn't even started. Jong Soo-hyun opens the door for Yoon-ho. It turns out he left her daughter, Bile, at Soo-hyun's house when he was late coming home. Soo-hyun herself lives with her mother and her son, and Bile calls Soo-hyun's mother grandma. They seem very close and like family. Her mother feels that Yoon-ho is a good father, and a good father usually becomes a good husband. But Soo-hyun feels that her mother is just talking nonsense and thinks she's not serious. But her mother thinks that two singles relying on each other will be perfect.
주는 거예요?
Yoon-Ho's co-workers haven't come home yet and they discuss Mr. Song, who really hates Yoon-Ho. If it's because of his leave, that's too old-fashioned and ridiculous. According to one of her friends, the leave was just an excuse, because Mr. Song took revenge. Before the leave, the two of them were preparing to update the management system. It was a direct order from the CEO, so Mr. Song poured out everything. However, after Yoon-Ho applied for leave, everything fell apart. It turned out that Yoon-Ho applied for leave because his daughter was sick, because her mother didn't pay attention to her. And knowing that, Yoon-Ho was very hurt and asked for leave for his daughter's recovery. Mr. Song told Yoon-Ho to reconsider, because after this is over, their future will only be filled with beauty. But Yoon-Ho couldn't because Bae was sick. And Mr. Song thought that was a sad reason, because his daughter's illness wasn't a big deal. But Yoon-Ho felt that his daughter was special to him, and he left Mr. Song. That's why Yoon-Ho always failed to get promoted, and Yoon-Ho's life is quite busy. Then the female staff is sad, why did Yoon-Ho have to get married so soon, even though he is that handsome? How can his daughter be 7 years old?
아직 7살이고.
Yoon-Ho enjoys his break with his friend. His friends think Yoon-Ho is very mature, because he got married, had a child, and divorced in his 20s. But Yoon-Ho feels chaotic in the company and he really wants to resign from his job. And at that time Yoon-Ho was surprised because his friends didn't stop him. Then his friends reminded Yoon-Ho about Bae's school fees, living expenses, his loans, retirement savings, and childcare costs. He would be stupid to quit now, but his friends think Yoon-Ho really likes to be the first in everything. First marriage and baby, divorce, promotion, and first paternity leave, but her friends hope he won't be the first to be fired. Yoon-Ho feels he didn't do anything wrong, but it's like he's always guilty. Suddenly, Yoon-Ho sees Mr. Young and approaches him, but Mr. Young rushes away and leaves Yoon-Ho. The next day, Mr. Song is angry with Yoon-Ho because Mr. Young moved to a Chinese company. But Yoon-Ho really doesn't know about that. Mr. Song tells him to find out where Mr. Young went. Mr. Song suspects Yoon-Ho of working same with him, and buy time for him to gather informations. If he really did corporate espionage against them, then Yoon-Ho has to take responsibility. Yoon-Ho rushes to call Mr. Young, but his number can't be reached. Then he remembers that Mr. Young mentioned CEO Kang Ji-yoon. Then Yoon-Ho finds out the recruitment company, where Ji-yoon is the CEO. And Yoon-Ho is in front of Ji-yoon's company and suddenly, Ji-yoon gets into his car. Ji-yoon gets out of his car, because she got into the wrong car again and Yoon-Ho chases her. He feels that Ji-yoon told Mr. Young to go to China. Yoon-Ho thinks that Ji-yoon only cares about getting clients and profits. Yoon-Ho feels that if Mr. Young moves to China, then his career is over and he can't go back to Korea, and that's make he feels that Ji-yoon has no morals. Ji-yoon tries to explain what happened, but suddenly Yoon-Ho gets a message from Mr. Young that he is at the airport. And Yoon-Ho rushes after him to the airport and Ji-yoon is very upset because she hasn't finished talking. Kim Hae-jin is a director at a recruitment company and it seems she's the one who made Mr. Young decide to move to China. Finally, Yoon-Ho meet Mr. Young at the airport. Mr. Young was shocked because he was accused of technology leaks, because he was not involved in anything. He thought they needed him, but it turned out he was only considered a traitor who wanted to move jobs. Mr. Young left because he wanted to work and couldn't eat a blind salary. He couldn't stand it anymore and didn't want to work in Korea anymore. Yoon-Ho apologized for not knowing what really happened. But Mr. Young didn't blame Yoon-Ho, because he only did what he was told. Mr. Young actually a bit worried. He hoped this wouldn't backfire on Yoon-Ho. He told Yoon-Ho not to push himself for the company. They are only disposable. They will be thrown away after being used. Yoon-Ho was called by his friend because the internal investigation team took the computer and all the notes on his desk. Yoon-Ho said that Mr. Young had left, and her friend thought, this is Mr. Song's action. He is waiting for an opportunity to retaliate against Yoon-ho. And Yoon-ho was fired because he was accused of leaking internal information. Mai was shocked to see Eugene returning to the office at night with a pale face. She told Eugene to go home because she was like a zombie. She told her to eat something delicious and sleep. But Eugene wanted to check the files and Mai could only let her. But suddenly Eugene fainted and was taken to the hospital. Woo Jong-han, Eugene's younger brother, panicked and looked for his older sister. But Eugene casually drank coffee at the hospital, even though Mai and her younger brother were panicking about her condition. Doctor explained that Jiyoon's brain was overloaded. Simply put, the brain works too hard and protests for its owner to stop. Her brain is not fragile, Jiyoon just uses it too much, stress that burdens her brain, and that causes the nervous system to show abnormalities, and makes it confused when mentioning names or forgetting to do something. Mai felt that what the doctor said was absolutely right, because Jiyoon experienced all of that. All of that caused Jiyoon to be sick, so doctor told her not to stress and reduce her workload. In the elevator, Jiyoon seemed to see someone she knew. It turned out to be Yoon-ho, and he tried to avoid Jiyoon, but Jiyoon had seen him and recognized him. In the office, Mai was surprised because Eugene came in with Yoon-ho. Then Mai called Yoon-ho and introduced their CEO, Miss Kong Ji-yoon. And she introduced her new secretary, Mr. Yoon-ho. Eugene was surprised to find out that Yoon-ho was her new secretary.